For it is not the meters, but a meter-making argument that makes a poem. A thought so passionate and alive that, like the spirit of a plant or an animal, it has an architecture all its own, and adorns nature with a new theme.
Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Today is the next installment of Poetry for Beginners, and June's poet was Walt Whitman. Both Kelly and Lukash and I all had some issues in getting our videos out in June, so I decided to save mine for the 4th of July because given what I'm going to talk about with Walt Whitman, it seemed really appropriate. So happy 4th of July to my fellow Americans, and happy 4th of July to everybody else too, I guess. I don't know what to say after that. What we decided to do with Walt Whitman was essentially to read Leaves of Grass. And Kelly and I focused on the 1855 edition, which is the original edition of Leaves of Grass. And we each read varying amounts of Walt Whitman's poetry. I read all of the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass. I'm not exactly sure what everybody else did. This was a struggle for me because I really had a hard time connecting with Whitman's poetry, with what he was writing in Leaves of Grass. A lot of times it just seemed like lists of jobs and occupations or places or types of people or, you know, bits from nature, and it just really didn't connect to me. There would be a couple of lines where I thought were really beautiful and powerful, and then be followed by a line which I just didn't like at all. So this was kind of a struggle for me to try to figure out what to do about this Poetry for Beginners and Walt Whitman. In the end, what I decided to do was to look at Whitman and the importance of Leaves of Grass and kind of evaluate it more from a historical perspective than as a work of literature. This may be a cop-out since I'm a history person, but that's the way I decided to look at it, because I don't think there's any arguing that Leaves of Grass is one of, if not the most important poetic works in American literary history. So the quote at the beginning comes from a lecture called The Poet by that Ralph Waldo Emerson gave in New York in 1842. That speech was later published as an essay in a collection of his essays, I believe in 1844. And in it, he calls for the creation of, a unique and original American art and literature. Specifically in The Poet, obviously he's talking about American poetry. Walt Whitman was in the audience listening to Emerson deliver this speech about poetry and an original American style. And there's no doubt that he was inspired by that. Whitman abandons a concept of, traditional form and meter in his poetry, and he writes a kind of free verse that is rambling and sometimes rhythmical in and of itself. Sometimes Leaves of Grass resembles kind of Hindu or Eastern religious writings with this kind of repetition. It's kind of, making the point over and over again. Leaves of Grass attempts to kind of create this idea of the universality of human experience, that all people and nature are all connected, and so it has this kind of mystical quality about it too. But the truth of the matter is that Whitman wasn't, I don't think, writing specifically about the universal kind of nature of man and all of humanity. He was talking about the United States itself. And when you read Leaves of Grass and think about it in its historical context as a part of the Transcendentalist or the American Romantic movement, in which American writers and artists begin to break away from English or European traditions, then it fits right in that historical context, and you can see it as a true celebration of the United States of America. So I have 3 excerpts, 3 parts of it that I'm going to have a reading of that have to do with, and I think kind of support this idea that it's a celebration of the United States of America itself. So in the first example, Whitman is describing the people of the United States of America and celebrating the diversity of the American population.
One of the great nation, the nation of many nations, the smallest the same and the largest the same, a southerner soon as a northerner, a planter nonchalant and hospitable, a Yankee bound my own way, ready for trade, my joints the limberest joints on earth and the sternest joints on earth, a Kentuckian walking the vale of the Elkhorn in my deerskin leggings, a boatman over the lakes or bays or along coasts, a Hoosier, a Badger, a Buckeye, a Louisianan, a Georgian, a Pokeezy from sand hills and pines, at home on Canadian snowshoes or up in the bush, or with fishermen off Newfoundland, at home in the fleet of ice boats sailing with the rest and tacking, at home on the hills of Vermont or in the woods of Maine, or the Texan ranch.
In the second reading, Whitman is celebrating the landscape of the United States and the unique natural beauty of the United States.
Smile, O voluptuous, cool-breathed earth, earth of the slumbering and liquid trees, earth of departed sunset, earth of the mountains misty-topped, earth of the virtuous pour of the full moon just tinged with blue, earth of shine and dark modeling the tide of the river, earth of the limpid gray of clouds brighter and clearer for my sake, far-swooping elbowed earth, rich apple-blossomed earth, smile, for your lover comes.
And in the third reading, Whitman is celebrating the unique form of government the United States has, and it is an ode to democracy and the way democracy is supposed to work, which, by the way, living in the United States of America right now is something I think more of us need to be reminded of.
The sum of all known value and respect I add up in you, whoever you are. The President is up there in the White House for you. It is not you who are here for him. The secretaries act in their bureaus for you, not you here for them. The Congress convenes every December for you. Laws, courts, the forming of states, the charters of cities, the going and coming of commerce and mails are all for you. All doctrines, all politics and civilization exurge from you. All sculpture and monuments and anything inscribed anywhere are tallied in you.
So, quality of poetry aside, which I admit I struggled with, I think Whitman's Leaves of Grass is incredibly important work because of its celebration of the United States, of its belief that the United States should be culturally, artistically independent, and should go its own way and celebrate its own uniqueness. And in the historical context, that's really important. Leaves of Grass, whether you know it or not, helps to establish a lot of the myths, a lot of the mythology about the United States of America, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, but he does help establish a lot of the ideas about the United States that we have, that the United States is unique and blessed and destined for greatness, that the people of the United States, their strength lies in our diversity. Some of those ideas are certainly old-fashioned. Some of those ideas are inherently jingoistic, nationalistic, but some of those ideas are ideas which, I think appeal to our higher values as Americans, like the idea that strength lies in diversity. Anyway, to me, Leaves of Grass is Walt Whitman answering Emerson's call for a unique style of American poetry that celebrates the things that are unique about the United States. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I look forward to your comments in the comment section below.
America is a poem in our eyes. Its ample geography dazzles the imagination, and it will not wait long for meters.